It is midnight in Washington, 9 in Sochi, and 2 p.m. on a Thursday here in Seoul. I'm Moon Gun-young. Let's get a check of the main stories we're following at this hour. The highest level talks between the two Koreas in years end overnight with little progress because of North Korea's call for a delay of annual military drills between Seoul and Washington as they coincide with reunions for families separated by the Korean War. U.S. President Barack Obama will visit Korea in April as part of his tour of Asia, which will also include stops in Japan, Malaysia, and the Philippines. Now, his trip to Seoul and Tokyo comes at a time of aggravated political tensions between Washington's two Northeast Asian allies. And cleanup and recovery costs in the snow-battered eastern parts of Korea are estimated at more than $3 million. But another 30 centimeters of snow are expected overnight, wreaking more havoc in the area. Now, we'll have those stories and more. But first, let's begin with the high-level talks between the two Koreas. Now, hopes that there might be a breakthrough during discussions were dashed very late Wednesday night when the two sides decided to call it a night with no substantive agreement after a marathon 14-hour meeting. Arirang News Unification Ministry correspondent Hwang Sung-hee starts us off.
After nearly 14 hours of negotiations, South Korean Chief Delegate Kim Kyu-hyun and his North Korean counterpart Won Dong-hyun called it a day without reaching an agreement. South Korea's Unification Ministry said the upcoming family reunions and the joint military drills between Seoul and Washington were the most pressing issues at Wednesday's high-level inter-Korean talks. The Koreas are scheduled to resume reunions for families separated by the Korean War from February 20th to the 25th. For the first time in over 3 years. Pyongyang had threatened to call off the plan if Seoul went ahead with its joint military drills with Washington at the end of this month. At Wednesday's meeting, South Korea stressed the reunion event must be held as planned since it could serve as a first step in improving inter-Korean ties. The North, on the other hand, urged Seoul to postpone the upcoming key resolve and full legal exercises to sometime after the reunions. South Korea did not take the offer, sticking to its principle that humanitarian issues and military drills be dealt with separately. South Korea and the U.S. say the drills are defensive in nature, but the North views them as a practice for war. An official at the Unification Ministry said the family reunions may be put on hold if the North continues to link the event with the military exercises. The two Koreas agreed to hold additional discussions down the road, but did not fix a date. Hwang Sung-hee, Arirang News.
And during those talks on Wednesday, North Korea agreed to the upcoming inter-Korean family reunions from the 20th to the 25th of this month. Now, Pyongyang, however, added that it will not take part on the final 2 days of the 6-day event because it overlaps with Seoul's joint military drills with Washington. Now, earlier today, the South Korean government said Wednesday's talks was an opportunity to clearly explain its principles to the North and to learn a little bit more about Pyongyang's real intentions. Presidential spokesperson Min Kyung-wook told reporters that the South Korean delegation explained President Park's envisioned trust-building process with North Korea, as well as her thoughts on inter-Korean relations. Seoul also got to know how sensitive Pyongyang is when it comes to the South military drills with the U.S. and South Korea's media coverage denouncing the North. However, the spokesperson said the agenda did not include resuming tours to the North Mount Kumgang Resort or lifting South Korean sanctions in response to the North torpedo attack on a South Korean warship in 2010. So during this rare high-level meeting that continued overnight, North Korea demanded that the South postpone this month's annual joint military drills with the U.S. to avoid an overlap with planned reunions of families separated during the Korean War. Now, this has raised the possibility that the family reunion event might be scuttled and could be a setback to weeks of confidence-building efforts by Seoul. For an analysis of the situation, we're joined live on the line by Dr. Kim Chul-woo, a senior research fellow at the Korea Institute for Defense Analysis. Dr. Kim, good to have you with us.
Thanks for having me.
Now, North Korea says it will proceed with this humanitarian event, but will not carry it out during the Korea-U.S. joint drills. Now, what are its intentions?
Obviously, North Korea's peace offensive is to ease the diplomatic isolations and economic difficulties while solidifying Kim Jong-un's grip on the regime. But interestingly, the year's peace offensive is somewhat different from the previous one. And particularly, they are trying to use the so-called ambiguous graying tactics, I would say, because instead of following the South Korean offer, they proposed the so-called revised counteroffer or pressure. For instance, initially, the South Korea Seoul government proposed the family union date from considering the North Koreans' Kim Jong-il's birthday and the upcoming joint military exercises. So they set up 17th to 20th time slot. But North Korea revised that offer from the starting the 20th to 25th, knowingly they already known the pre-planned joint military exercises. Likewise, North Korea's so-called crucial proposals is quite interesting, because they proposed the so-called cessation of slaughter, military drills, and on top of it, they used the nuclear catastrophe like a keyword. Overall, North Korea's intentions, taking 50% of the whatever photogenic photo session of the North and South Korean high-level talks. So I still suspicious the North Korean sincerity in this sense.
Now, Dr. Kim, Pyongyang's request for inter-Korean contact on Wednesday, of course, this was made by Pyongyang and everything was carried out behind closed doors. Now, isn't that rather unusual? And what, in your view, is the purpose of Pyongyang's request for such contact?
It's quite unusual, as you said. First of all, they offered the South Korean counterpart, instead of a unification ministry, they asked for the presidential Cheongwade official as the head of the Seoul delegation. Looking back, last June, North and South squabbled over the delegation chief. So this time, they left behind unification ministry, and they are trying to directly contact with the Cheongwade. So North Korean side, the National Defense Commission, that powerful commission, offered the gathering on Saturday instead of the weekday. Likewise, North Korea's negotiation tactics traditionally like a sly fox, but this time it looks on the surface it's very sincere, but in detail they try to show off their goodwill intention, but they want to have so-called general agreement and different in detailed views. So this is very hard to describe North Korea's real intention at the moment, but the overall tactics and negotiations skills is quite it's not sophisticated, but it's quite different from the previous black and white and taking 100% tactics.
Right. I mean, I suppose we'll never know what the real intention of North Koreans or what's running through the minds of North Koreans ever, in fact. Now, what's your forecast on immediate inter-Korean relations here? I mean, meaning the family reunion scheduled for next week, and about inter-Korean relations in the longer term as well.
Like I mentioned, they would start a family union, like 50% of family union. They would start on 25th because it's before the joint military exercises. So while enjoying their sincerity posture with the starting of the negotiation, I mean the family union, while demanding the scrap or delaying the joint military exercise. Even the joint military exercise, they changed the wording. Instead of the cancel or scrapping their military exercise. They used the postpone or delay the military exercise until after the staging the reunion of the family unions. So I think for the upcoming family reunion, I'm very positive it'll get started. But in the longer term, with the full-scale staging of the military drills, they would denounce again, and they would blackmail another provocation during the exercise period. So overall, it's kind of a compromising new technique to try to use the international opinion while getting the good review by the Chinese and the visiting John Kerry's visit and overall attention from the international media. So longer term is very pessimistic. For the short term, for the family unions, I would say 50% of success.
All right, so your forecast is that next week's family reunions, at least the first part, will get underway no matter what.
Yes.
All right, Dr. Kim Chung, Senior Research Fellow at the Korea Institute for Defense Analyses. Thank you for speaking with us today.
Thank you.
All of the day's important events. Events close to home, around the world.
Second half blast figure out what winners.
The arts and culture scene and the heart of global business.
Experts added that
Arirang News has your whole day covered.
the legislature will convene a plenary session this Wednesday and vote on the government.
Now on to the latest on the heavy snow on the eastern coast of this country, where more than a meter of snow has blanketed Gangwon-do this week. Authorities now estimate the damage from the storm to be roughly $3.3 million so far, but given that more than 30 meters or centimeters of snow fell overnight, the damages and costs are expected to rise. The snow has also inconvenienced the area residents and blocked traffic. As of Thursday morning, at least 210 facilities, including greenhouses, had collapsed or been damaged under the sheer weight of the snow. Several bus companies have also suspended operations. Now, snow removal work is being carried out in the affected areas. In other news, U.S. President Barack Obama will be visiting Seoul in a few weeks' time, following diplomatic efforts by South Korea to be added to the itinerary. Ji Myung-gil has the details.
U.S. President Barack Obama has added South Korea to the itinerary for his upcoming trip to Asia. The White House confirmed on Wednesday that the Asia trip is part of Obama's ongoing commitment to increase U.S. diplomatic, economic, and security engagement with countries in the Asia-Pacific region. Although no dates have been released yet, it's reported the president will visit Tokyo first from April 22nd to 23rd, then Seoul from the 23rd to the 24th. During his stay in Seoul, the U.S. president plans to meet with President Park Geun-hye, where they are expected to reaffirm the two sides' alliance, review the security situation on the peninsula, and discuss the Korea-U.S. free trade deal. Now that Seoul is on the itinerary, speculation is rising as to whether President Obama will address the prickly relations between Seoul and Tokyo. A number of disputes over history and territory have chilled relations between the two, especially after Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe visited a shrine honoring convicted war criminals in December. Obama may, however, choose to stay away from arbitrating the complex historical problems and territorial disputes between the two. North Korea's nuclear program will top the agenda when Park and Obama meet, along with the timing of the transfer of wartime operational control of U.S. forces in South Korea from the U.S. to South Korea. The transfer date was originally slated for next year, but South Korea has been pushing for a delay. April will also be a critical time for trade negotiations. Obama is expected to try to push to tie the Korea-U.S. Free Trade Agreement to the Trans-Pacific Partnership Free Trade Pact that includes 12 nations, as Korean participation in the partnership could further cement a future trading order in Asia that would include North America. Ji Myung-gil, Arirang News.
Now, ahead of President Obama's visit to Korea, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry is due to arrive in Seoul this Thursday for a two-day visit. Kerry, who will be visiting Seoul for the first time in 10 months, will hold talks with his South Korean counterpart Yoon Byung-se, where North Korea issues will likely dominate, especially a day after Seoul and Pyongyang's high-level talks. Assessing the North's recent peace offensive and the possibilities of another provocation, the two ministers will also seek ways to resolve the North Korean nuclear issue. And before departing for Beijing Friday, Kerry will also pay a courtesy call to President Park Geun-hye. Now, in other news, the country's financial regulator vowed to upgrade the data protection system as Korea reels from the shock of the largest ever personal data leak in its history. During a meeting at the National Assembly Thursday, Financial Services Commission Chair Shin Jae-yoon reiterated the importance of protecting client data and vowed to improve the nation's data security structure in order to regain the public trust. Well, he also offered an apology for the leak. He added that the previously proposed 3-month suspension of businesses at the 3 card firms where the leak occurred will begin as early as Friday. The Bank of Korea has left its key interest rate unchanged at 2.5% for the 9th straight month in February. Following its monthly monetary policy meeting Thursday, the central bank said it expects the local and global economy to stay on a path of moderate recovery. The central bank, however, took note of the financial instability in emerging economies stemming from the U.S. Federal Reserve's decision to scale back its monthly bond buying stimulus program. The nation's inflation rate ran below the central bank's target band for the 20th straight month in January, standing at 1.1%. And taking a brief look at how the local stock market is doing at this hour, Seoul shares are set to snap a 6-day winning streak on this Thursday as foreigners repositioned as sellers, offsetting some of the positive sentiment flowing from the world's 2 largest economies. As of 1:30 p.m. Korea time, the benchmark Kospi was down 0.05% at 1935 after hitting an intraday high of 1945. The tech-heavy Kosdaq was up 0.2%, while on the foreign exchange counter, the Korean currency was trading weaker against the greenback at roughly 1,064 won. One of the biggest and most recognizable tech companies in the world is gearing up to make a huge investment right here in Korea. Microsoft says it plans to build a massive $9 billion data center somewhere in the country, but it hasn't decided on a specific location just yet. Yoo reports.
Microsoft's plans to build a data center in Korea would make it by far the largest investment ever made in Korea by a global technology firm. Microsoft Korea said on Wednesday that its head office will build a data center on 330,000 square meters of land. While the exact amount is yet to be decided, Microsoft is looking to invest over 10 trillion won, or roughly $9.4 billion into the project. Considering the scale of the project and the investment, Microsoft's data center could be the largest of its kind in all of Asia. It will be twice as big as the data center Google says it plans to build in Taiwan. The data center will also serve as a facility to provide a backup service for data flowing in from Asia and other parts of the world. A delegation from Microsoft has reportedly already visited Korea to look at possible sites, with the southernmost port city of Busan rising as a strong candidate. Microsoft is believed to have chosen Korea for its data center as the country holds excellent maintenance and repair manpower, is less prone to natural disasters, and has cheap electricity. Yoo-rian, Arirang News.
And now moving over to our daily coverage of the Sochi 2014 Winter Olympics, we are of course joined live in the studio by our Lee Tae-ho. Good afternoon to you, Tae-ho.
Good afternoon.
Now, I think one of the current trends in Sochi this time around for the Winter Olympics this time is that we really cannot expect the outcome of any event.
That's right. Now, with the Olympics being such a hyped event, so many people watching around the world, I think a lot of expectations on the athletes are enormous, and sometimes it's very difficult to live up to those expectations.
Right, and we've definitely seen some of the favorites of different events failing to make up to their best records or winning the race.
Well, not even just winning the race or living up to their expectations, their normal expectations. I think most notably Shaun White failing to medal at all in the men's snowboarding event, or even our Motaebom, who was the gold medalist at the 2010 Games in the 500-meter event, placing fourth. And that was a disappointing result, but it's always ever so changing with these new athletes coming up and new training techniques that you never know what to expect really in the Olympics.
Right, and even with Motaebom going into the 1,000-meter men's speed skating event, I mean, we had expected, I suppose, a battle between Motaebom and perhaps Shani Davis of the U.S., but that was not the case.
That was not the case at all. Now, Shani Davis, who was the two-time Olympic gold medalist in the 1,000-meter event for the 2006 and 2010 Olympics, failed to medal at all, placing a very disappointing 8th place. Now, he was the overwhelming favorite. He was trying to make history, being the only man to win the same event 3 times in a row for America. And also Motaebom, too. He was expected to do much better than how he performed last night. He was a silver medalist at the 2010 Games, but he came in a disappointing 12th place. And also, of course, making news for Korea was Lee Gyu-hyuk, who had his last race really at the Olympics. And it was just kind of really hard to see one of the legendary great skaters of Korea calling it, the last run, and seeing how exhausted he was after the whole event itself.
Right. I mean, he's I think Lee Gyu-hyuk could be, named a true Olympian, if you will. I mean, 6-time Olympian. I mean, he's been to the Olympics 6 times, and the race last night. Although it wasn't a winning race, it was a truly inspirational race for, I suppose, many of us around the world.
And I think with the Korean skaters, what I noticed was that, for their start and the first 500 to 600 meters, they ran a very good race with good times, but it was down the stretch, the last 400 meters, that they really had a lot of difficulty with. But regardless of the result, all of our athletes, I think, did very well. They really tried their hardest this time around.
Now, also in competition last night was Korea's one of new favorite sports, curling.
That's right. Now, the Korean curling team is far from the favorites at this 2014 Sochi, but I think they were very disappointed in themselves for their performance, especially with the skipper Kim Ji-sun failing to make, cold-hearted calls at the right time. So them losing to the number 4 team in the world, Switzerland, 6-8, and then again losing to the number 1 team in the world, Sweden, 4-7. Now, regarding the rankings around the world, Korea is the lowest ranking team in the Olympics for curling, but regardless, I think failing to live up to their own personal expectations was the hardest for the team members.
Right. I mean, they have such a bright future ahead of them. Curling is just becoming one of the stronger sports for Korea, winter sports, and, they should not feel bad about this at all. Now, let's move on to women's figure skating. I mean, it's a week away. The short event is a week away, and still already there is much hype and much media coverage going on between who will win between Queen Yana and a young upstart from Russia.
That's right. Now, the women's figure skating event is one of the biggest events in all of the winter sports activities for the Olympics especially. And with the arrival of Queen Yoona Kim, of course, we see a lot of media focus turning to the practice schedules, who will be practicing when. And it turns out that both Kim Yoona and Lipniskaya will be practicing at the same time at one of the practice sessions. So it's a great storyline, as if there wasn't already enough attention on the women's skating event, because this is, of course, Kim Yona's final Olympics. She said that she will retire after this from the Olympics. So it's an interesting storyline. We'll see. We'll have to see how Russia's new sweetheart, Lipniskaya, will do against, of course, one of the greats in figure skating.
Right, and I'm sure you will keep us updated with all of the latest on that as well. Now, yesterday, it wasn't all bad news for Team Korea.
No, not at all. For many of us, we missed out on we were waiting for the medal ceremony for Lee Sang-hwa, and we only got a flower ceremony after the actual event. However, the official medal ceremony took place last night. She was teary-eyed. She was very, very, I guess, overjoyed. She's been in that position before, but regardless, another 4 years of that training and all the grueling, very difficult lifestyle that she's had to lead, I think kind of overwhelmed her in that moment.
You know, one of the things that that I was curious about is was why she wasn't awarded with a medal right after her competition. Why there was just a flower ceremony and then the day after they are awarded with a medal?
Well, I think that's one of the biggest differences between the summer and winter games. During the summer events, after the competition is over, athletes are awarded the medal right away. However, at the winter games, athletes are given a day to rest so they can recuperate from the cold and the exhaustion and really be able to take in the moment the next day at a central location where also more fans can gather to congratulate them.
Right, and really enjoy their victory and I suppose, you know, make it up to their fans in the crowd. All right, Teo, thank you so much for today. I'm sure we'll have much more to talk about tomorrow.
That's right.
And that's all from me at this hour. Thank you for watching. I'll be back with more of the day's latest at 4 p.m. Korea time. See you then.